Sophie,
Mm-hmm.
are you ready to stage a coup?
Oh, we've already staged a coup.
It's happened.
Yeah. Penn is out.
Pen to the curb. It's exactly what nobody wanted except the two of us.
No, before our numbers immediately drop,
Yeah.
we need to tell you Penn is part of this episode.
We promise. He will be part of this episode, but he's not part of the introduction to the episode. He's landing the plane. He's filming the finale of You, Too Intense to Take Time to record this.
Yeah. Yeah. We miss him.
We miss him. Speaking of You, today's guest is Dylan Arnold, but before we get to all of his, that's Theo. For you lovers. But before we get to all of his accolades, I, about a month ago, said that I might try this Maeve supplement bar for our faithful listeners, the one that my dad tried and liked. And I decided to do it on camera.
For those of you that maybe don't know, Maeve is not just any supplement bar. It's for dogs.
It's not for humans.
It's a dog treat.
It's a dog treat. But it smells so good. I give it to my dogs every day. They love it so much and it smells so good that I feel left out. And I just want to try it and see. So I'm going to give you guys my honest reaction. Sophie, can you hold the mic?
I'm so excited. Yeah.
I'm quite nervous too. I'm gonna tell you guys the truth. But
what flavor is this?
so this is. It doesn't say. It's a supplement bar for dogs, anxiety and calming. It smells like it's like peanut butter and sesame. I think I'm so nervous I can't open it.
Do you need me to help you?
We're losing money.
If Nava becomes very chill,
Yeah, that's right.
it's the bar.
Okay, yeah, sesame. I will ask you to smell it. I won't make you eat it, but
I'll smell it.
tell everyone what you think of the smell and if you think it smells like something a human should eat.
Oh yeah, it smells lovely.
It smells really good.
Yeah, it smells great. I might try it.
Okay, it smells like coconut.
It smells like peanut butter and all good things.
Okay. It's honestly really good.
No.
It really is. I feel like you should take a bite. No, it's honestly really good. I told Sophie if I don't like it, I'll just be like neutral about it. But it's actually really good. It's not sweet. I thought it would be sugary.
I'm shook.
It tastes like a cracker.
Okay.
Like like those hard crackers that you dip in tea?
Yeah.
Maeve, I'm so impressed. I have to say, this is human grade.
God.
I would finish this whole thing. Do you want a bite?
I'm tempted.
telling the
Yeah.
truth. I'm telling the
Okay. I'll take a bite.
I'll hold your thing.
It's actually very good.
Yeah, right?
It tastes like a cracker, like
It
you said,
tastes
like a biscuit.
cracker. Yeah,
I can't believe
You can dip this in tea.
Yeah.
I have to say that I cannot recommend that humans eat this because it was made for dogs. And our sponsor, Maeve, did not ask us to do this. This will be a surprise to them that we are doing this.
Listen.
But just in terms of taste, I would recommend it.
I thought you were about to take another bite. I honestly would. I feel like if that was like the last snack in the house, I'm going for it.
Yeah. Good job, Maeve.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. I'm sweating.
Have you guys lost respect for us? Dylan Arnold, what a party. It was so great to have him. He was so lovely. I apologize to Dylan personally that Penn is not introducing him. For the first time ever, Sophie and I are introducing the guest. I might let Sophie do it. I'm still chewing this.
Today's guest is Dylan Arnold, who was such a pleasure to have on the show. You probably know him from You, where he played Theo Engler in season 3, but he was also in Oppenheimer. He's in the Halloween franchise.
Most recently, he's in Apple TV's adaptation of Lady in the Lake, where he shares the screen with Natalie Portman and Moses Ingram. We get into what it was like to work on You, to work opposite Victoria, to work with Penn. We get into Oppenheimer. But first, we start with a very rich conversation on his childhood. He was just so into it, had so many stories. So really excited for this one. Stick around.
Welcome to Podcrushed. We're your hosts. I'm Penn.
I'm Sophie. And I'm Nava. And I think we would have been your middle school besties.
Publicly saying you love Nine Inch Nails, but privately feeling like they're just a little bit too intense. You seem like a uniquely motivated adolescent. You seem like I don't know what's true, and so we'll hear about it, but it sounds like you were really persuasive, getting your parents to, support this love of performing, of acting. So, but it sounds like maybe some of it started with, or it was like developing at Seattle Children's Theater. So this is,
Yeah.
So please, I'm really curious about that, like 12, 13, 14-year-old Dylan, like falling in love with theater and performing, and how he, thinking there you use the word artist. I don't know. How did you see yourself and how did you see the world?
That's interesting. Well, you said very a motivated individual, and I didn't think of myself that way, but I guess reflecting on it, I'm like, I guess I just didn't, it wasn't conscious. It just felt like something that I needed to do. It was like the thing that I was the happiest doing. And I think fortunately my parents saw that. I was a very energetic child. I wasn't a great student in the classroom. So I felt like, doing theater and all that kind of allowed me to access parts of me that I wanted to access all the time, but it's not appropriate in every situation to perform. But yeah, Seattle Children's Theater was 12, 13. That
perfect.
Was right around there. That's crazy because I was like, what
was your experience there?
I believe it was during the summer. So I grew up on Banbridge Island. I didn't grow up in Seattle.
Yeah, nobody's actually from Seattle. We just all say
I know
Seattle.
everyone says that they're from Seattle, but they're from Bellevue or Tacoma or Redmond or whatever. It's like
I went to school in Tacoma.
Okay. And you're from Tacoma. That's where you.
No, I lived outside of Issaquah. And then later lived in Gig Harbor. Do you know Gig Harbor?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Seattle. Yeah.
Why is that such a thing with Seattle specifically? I feel like more than any other city in the U.S., when people say they're from Seattle, they're not really from Seattle.
I think it's just because nobody knows these places outside of Seattle, so you just say Seattle.
I guess so. Go ahead. Bainbridge Island. What was it like growing up there?
It really was a very magical place. There's a lot of greenery. It's a pretty small community. You kind of, especially growing up, I feel like I kind of knew everyone, even if I wasn't friends with them. You knew about them.
Yeah.
I would see these people walking around Bainbridge, and they would almost, these older people, these jocks or whatever, they almost felt like celebrities to me because I was like, oh wow, I've heard about them. I'm not friends with them, but I know who that is. And sports were like huge where I was growing up. And I played baseball, but I wasn't like super athletic. So I always kind of wanted to be more of that because that's what everyone respond to.
What position did you play? Were you a pitcher by any chance? I feel like you have a pitcher's body.
I did pitch.
Yeah.
I pitched. I played second base. I'm pretty sure when I was younger, I played right field because I definitely wasn't the strongest baseball player. But I did pitch a little bit. But I joined a baseball league recently, so that's
really?
I've been returning to that a little bit, which has been fun. Kind of. Because when I was a kid, I was like, I want to be an actor or a professional baseball player. Those were the two things. It was like that was it, which are two very difficult professions to get into. So, but fortunately, one of them is working out so far.
Yeah.
When you say a kid, how early do you feel like you started to feel that as an actor?
8, 7.
Okay.
I this was something that I remember doing a school play in second grade, and it just was one of those things where I can't really put words to it, but it just felt right when I was doing it.
Yeah.
I felt comfortable, and it felt exciting, and I felt alive. And, I'm sure I had those moments where, I felt the audience respond to what I was doing, and I kind of got off that high because I was like, oh, wow. People are looking at me, and I'm being entertaining, but it's in an appropriate circumstance as opposed to in the middle of class.
You said you were kind of like high energy, or were you otherwise extroverted or energetic, or were you kind of shy?
I always thought of myself as an extroverted person, but as I've thought back on it, I think I was pretty shy. I think I was just terrified of people making fun of me or not liking me or rejecting me in some way. And I think the reason probably why I loved theater so much is because I felt like that's where I found my like-minded people.
When was your first play then? I'm curious.
The first one that I really remember that I did at Banbridge Performing Arts, which was the community theater that I grew up going to, was Jack and the Beanstalk. And I played the title role of Jack, which was very exciting to me. But I remember there was this moment where I think it was probably the Beanstalk was singing to me. And they had like 5 people playing different leaves or whatever. And there was this moment, and it really stands out. It was in the middle of the song, and there was a line where they said, Jack dropped to his knees or something, and I dropped to my knees. And it wasn't choreographed, but I did it. And I was just like, and I just did it. And I remember I was wearing these pants with a little elastic around the knees, and I scraped up my knee when I dropped to the ground. But after the show, I was like so excited that I just put my body out there and I put myself out there. And I was, for the sake of performance, I just remember feeling this energy. And that's kind of when I remember never feeling anything like that at any other point in my life. I would even hang out at the theater when I wasn't in the shows. I would just like hang out in the lobby and kind of hang around the other actors and see all the shows as many times as I could. I mean, it really genuinely was like a second home to me. That's kind of where I felt the most comfortable.
I just want to hear a little bit about your first home, like your parents. Do you have siblings?
Yeah.
How were they receiving all of this? I'm so curious.
Yeah, my brother is 5.5 years older than me, and he was not a performer. He was much more, he played video games, and I would say that he was probably much more tucked in than I was. I annoyed him to no end growing up.
Do you still?
No. We're if I do, he's in on it. He's in on the joke, so it's good. But I think now I remember there was a moment like now he appreciates what I do, and he was kind of like, oh, I guess I was your first critic. That's what he always says. Because at the dinner table, I would go on this interlude and dance and do whatever, and he would be like, "Stop it, that's not good." Whatever, So he was definitely my first critic. But yeah, I think my brother and I were very different. And when you're a kid, you're not really aware of the things that your parents are going through. You just don't have the capacity to think that way. So that's always interesting. That was interesting in my adult life, probably in the last 5 years. It's kind of the moment where you're starting to realize that your parents are human beings. and you're like, oh, wait, they're going there. This is their first trip in life as well. They're still figuring stuff out also. And so I think now I appreciate how probably challenging that was to have two very different children who had very different needs. But it was a very nurturing, I felt very supportive home. I don't think there was a moment where my parents ever said to me, no, you shouldn't act. They were just kind of like, well, if you're going to do it, do it. It's like really, really, really go for it.
It sounds like in some ways it was pretty continuous from, because you went to performing arts schools. Right? And so basically it sounds like from second grade, the seed is planted. And then, I mean, by the time you're 12 and 13, you're going to Seattle Children's Theater, which is that's a commitment.
Yeah. So you just hop on the ferry and you take the ferry over to the city. And I did it with...
That's beautiful. That's right. The famous ferry up in Seattle.
No, but I went with two other kids who were a year older than me. I think I was in 6th grade. They were in 7th grade. And we did theater together. So their parents kind of set them up with the same class at Seattle Children's Theater. So we would walk on the ferry together and walk up to Seattle Children's Theater. And I remember that being so cool to be away from my parents in the city and walking with these older kids, and we all had Heelys on, and we were just going down.
Heelys, you were the first guest, I think, to mention Heelys. Well, I forgot about Heelys. Whoa, Heelys.
Yeah, I remember they were the first ones to get it. And honestly, that was another moment where I kind of looked to these people that I thought were so cool, and I was like, I want those shoes with the wheels in them.
Wheels on my heels.
I want wheels on my heels. I want to walk on my toes at all times.
Yeah, I never had them.
They're also so ugly.
Yeah, I know, they're awful. They're awful.
They must have been so uncomfortable.
No, they were, because it was one of those things where the wheels were always present. So if you walked normally and you put your heel down first,
it's dangerous.
You would just slip out from underneath yourself.
It's insane.
It's crazy that they gave kids that, and they're like, sure, go
really
for it.
Is.
No, but I remember that we would just, we felt like the coolest squad in the world, heeling through the city to Seattle Children's Theater.
Yeah, I gotta say, Seattle as well. It is such a picturesque. Coming up from the ferry and getting into the heart of the city, especially where the Seattle Children's Theater was, I do remember that too. It was incredible. So what was your? Do you remember your first play there?
We did the Martian Chronicles.
Martian Chronicles.
I imagine it. I don't think it was a play. They probably adapted it into a play, I imagine.
Yeah, they did a lot of interesting stuff. I did 2 like originals there, and they were
Really?
like, it was like progressive and stuff. It was very
Yeah.
very
How old
interesting.
are you?
I think I was 10 and 11.
Yeah.
Had bit
I
parts.
Yeah, of course. It was kind of like there was like one kid who kind of had the lead, and you were always like, cool, you know. And then there were all these bit parts. But looking back, those bit parts were the most fun. You know, you got to do a bunch of different stuff. And I remember I played an old man. I played like an 80-year-old man when I was 13 years old, and I remember, just doing the classic, walking on stage and doing that sort of whatever, and that sort of caricature. But again, it was this sort of moment where I just felt like that's another really strong memory that I have of just feeling like I was able to disappear and just imagine and pretend, because that's all I wanted to do when I was a kid, was just, I honestly still do that. I catch myself just like daydreaming in these really elaborate scenarios. And so I kind of do it in a different way. I'm just not running around as much, which honestly, I feel like I should do a little more of, get a plastic sword again and just, like, why do we outgrow that? Why can't we do that still?
I'm starting to get a picture of you in your Heelys, following the older kids around on the ferry, skulking around theater lobbies. And I'm curious now, what was your relationship to crushes, those kinds of feelings, maybe romantic or heartbreak, rejection? What was going on for you at that age?
I feel like I had a crush on everybody all the time. I feel like I just, I was someone that I feel like I always had these really long, stable crushes for like years. The one person that I was like, oh, one day they'll see that I'm the one, and then we'll get married. When I'm in first grade, second grade. And then beyond that, I just had a crush on everyone else, all the time. So I think that I think that, and I didn't really date. There were kids that would date. There were kids that had girlfriends and boyfriends in 6th, 7th grade. And I was like, what? Yeah. That's wild. I never did that. I don't think I had my first serious relationship until high school, So I kind of looked at these things happening, and I was like, I wish I could do that, but I don't feel like it's possible for me. And I don't know why. I think probably like what I was saying, a combination of putting myself out there and getting rejected like that is just the most mortifying. It feels like death when you're a kid. It's just like, there's nothing worse. Because you're already.
I don't think you missed out on anything by not dating as a 12-year-old.
I don't think I did either.
No, I was actually going to say it's actually like relationships are an apparatus that adults are struggling to understand as well. I don't think 12 and 13-year-olds really have the faculties, to actually be in a relationship. So I do think it's actually a very appropriate and normal feeling to be like, I'm not ready for that, even as your friends are all starting to make out and stuff. I mean, it's that was definitely my experience too.
Right. And I think looking back, I think, it makes all the sense in the world. But my crushes were very just like tucked in. And I was like, well, they can never know.
Did you ever let any of them know? Was there ever a slip?
I had a couple friends who were all girls growing up, and I had a crush on each of them at one point or another. But my best friend, and we're still best friends now, we've been friends since we were 12.
Oh, that's so good.
I had a crush on her for years, and I told her, and I remember, well, I didn't tell her. I told one of my friends to tell her, because that's a lot.
Classic.
That's a lot safer.
Yeah.
That's a lot safer.
That's the route.
And yeah, exactly. Be like, I don't have to confront this. But I remember she messaged me on Facebook chat, where I think this was probably in 8th grade. I started crushing on her, 11, 12, and this was in 8th grade, and she messaged me and said, hey, I heard you like me. I just see you as a friend. And I was like, yeah, for sure, me too. Yeah,
totally.
yeah, totally. Me too. Like, no worries. But credit to her, like, I was always so terrified that if a girl found out that I liked her and she didn't like me back, she would just stop being friends with me. She would just stop talking to me. She would think I was weird. She would think I was, and to her credit, she was like, I feel like maybe there was awkwardness for a week, but like, I feel like we both really moved past it, and I definitely kept crushing for another 4 years, but then but no, we're still just lovely friends today, and we laugh about it, and it's I mean, it feels very special to me that you're able to have a really long-standing relationship in the broad sense of the word with someone, but then also just have those like adorable little bits to your life and the shared experience.
Yeah.
Having been on the other side of that situation where like maybe a long-term friend expresses feelings and they're not reciprocated, the person who always felt like it was just friendship is probably going to be fine to keep it as a friendship and to keep the friendship going. But the person who had the feelings, I think it's like it can be a blow to your ego, and oftentimes that's the person who will like retreat. So I feel like it says something about 13-year-old Dylan that you were able to just move past that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I just remember because I really liked her as a person. I really liked being her friend too. So it wasn't something that I wanted to like lose. I wasn't friends with her just because I liked her. I think it was a combination of the both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
The other story is this was in front of my friend who was my crush.
Yeah.
We were maybe 13 and we were going to a soccer game, and I had long hair. And I remember me, her, and our other friend were going through the gates, and we like got our ticket scanned, and I like ducked under something. And one of the people working there said to me, "Oh, excuse me, miss." And
to you?
To me, because I had this long hair, and I just when they started dying laughing, and it was so mortifying for a little boy to be mistaken for a little girl. Is like when you're a boy,
of course,
at that age, you're just like what?
It's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
I had the same thing. I had long hair. It would happen all the time, and when it would happen in front of girls, it was it's emasculating. It's your first, because you're thinking you should be a man.
I thought I was a man. I would stand in the mirror and like I was not fit. I would like flex and be like,
I was actually going to ask, were you, because you are tall, were you tall at this point, or had you, you know what I mean? Because that makes
I didn't have my
difference in your
growth spurt
experience.
until I was like 16 or 17.
Okay.
I think I was pretty short. I was a little, I was a little chubby. I wasn't. And all the girls would always talk about the guy's six packs, and I didn't have that. And I was just like,
why did they talk about the guy's six pack so much?
I don't know. They talked about, and I remember I remember when Twilight came out, they were all talking about Robert Pattinson's jawline in the movie.
Geez,
and I remember for like 2 years, everyone was talking about these jaws. And I was like, I don't. So I would like look in the mirror and I'd be like,
Where's my jaw?
Because he's 24.
because he's a man.
Yeah. He's twice your age.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
There's so many moments where I'm just like being brought back. I'm like, I haven't thought about this in a while.
Wait, stay there,
Yeah.
because if you're having flashbacks and what is it? Hot sweats? What do we say? It's not hot sweats. That's
Cold sweats?
Cold sweats.
Let's just redact that one. Is there something? Was there a moment that was particularly? Do you have an embarrassing story?
Oh, because I was so concerned about what people thought of me. I think I had so many embarrassing moments, but I think that probably didn't register to them.
Yeah.
Whether it was me saying something and maybe they didn't even respond to it. But in my head, I was like, that was a bad thing to say. They're gonna think X, Y, and Z. But I do remember this again had to do with a crush, and it was my very first crush. I think I liked her from kindergarten to fourth grade. And I remember in art class, I think in second grade, she, I guess, found out that I liked her. And in the middle of class, in front of everyone, it was also context. This was what we called junk art day, where one day a year we got to, like, the teachers went and bought a bunch of random knickknacks, and we got to just make whatever.
Wow.
So it was the best day ever.
So
it was
nice.
the day that you looked forward to all year. So needless to say, this day was ruined for me. But in the middle of art class, she just goes, "Dylan, you like me? Why would I like you? Everyone knows I like Graham." And I was like, "Oh no!" And
That's
literally
horrific.
out loud in front of everybody, and it just Like I was feeling so good about my junk art, and then after that, I was like, "What's the point? What's
That's
the
also,
point
I
of-"
gotta say, that is that's a little bit advanced for
That's
like
pretty
you said
brutal.
second grade, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That is
what
a
I
stone
felt.
cold. That's like a Mean Girls moment in second grade.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
pretty.
Oof, you're better off without her, brother.
Yeah, I mean that probably is the thing that stands out the most to me.
Yeah, it's pretty
because
brutal.
Because it was public. It felt like a public
Yeah,
execution.
yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, I was like, what? It just felt like survival constantly when I was growing up, of just wanting to feel like I had a kind of a home and a place to be accepted. You know, if you get made fun of as a kid, like that's the worst feeling ever. So I do remember those moments that I had an opportunity to join someone else and make fun of someone else. I was like, yes, it's not me. I'm not the one at the subject. And I remember just feeling so bad about it in the moment, being like, what am I doing? This is so awful. I'm like going along with this joke that is at someone else's expense, but it's only because if not, it's going to be at my expense. And I can't have that.
Yeah.
So I actually think I, without realizing it, carried that shade with me for a long time. Honestly, till I started therapy,
Yeah.
like a few years ago, I was like, I'm such a bad person for all that. My therapist is like, you're 12 and you realize that it's bad. Like it would be one thing if you didn't care. It's like you're experiencing those moments and figuring out what is right and wrong. And that also reflected how I behaved in class, which I know that you guys are teachers or
Nat,
were
former
teachers.
teachers.
Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
former.
Yeah, so I apologize because I would have probably made your life very difficult if I was in your class, because it was another one of those things where I'm like, oh, if I could get kids to laugh at me before they laugh at me, you know, it's like
Yeah,
if,
yeah.
if I'm controlling
yeah.
the laughter, then they're laughing with me, not at me. So I feel like that was kind of very early on. I was like, this is my defense mechanism. I can just be goofy. I can whatever. Make people laugh when the teacher's not looking. She turns around. I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything. And then I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, I
awesome.
know you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Podcrushed is brought to you by Symbiotica. I started taking Symbiotica because I'm actually in the middle of filming the final season of my show. It's incredibly demanding, physically and mentally. And I kept getting these little sinus infections. I really didn't want to get fully sick. And I got kids at home. Always trying to find time to be with my wife. You know, doing the podcast here. Frankly, I'm burning the candle at both ends, stretched just a little bit thin. I kept getting that little, you know, that nasal drip. Was really scared of getting something much worse. And one time it did. I realized something has to change. And since I'm not going to quit my job or abandon my family, I knew I had to get a little bit healthier. And since taking their products, I've noticed a change in my overall health, my energy levels, my sleep quality too. I'm more confident that I can take whatever my overwrought schedule is going to throw at me. Their products are formulated with the highest quality ingredients out there. You can taste it too. Symbiotica is transparent about how and where they source their ingredients to ensure you get the best products possible. Their formulas don't have any seed oils, preservatives, toxins, artificial additives, or natural flavors. In a time when we are just getting bombarded by inflammatory ingredients like that, it's awesome that Symbiotica is putting in the work to hold up to scrutiny. I take their liposomal vitamin C, which apparently promotes collagen production and boosts immunity. I can definitely feel the immunity. I don't know where I would feel the collagen production, but I don't know. Is that in my face, my lips? Do I look good? You'll be the judge. The magnesium L-threonate vanilla cream flavor is delicious. They really do taste so good. And like I said, you can immediately taste the quality of their ingredients, and you can feel it too. So I do love them. I take them every day. Feel more energized, alert, and balanced with high-quality supplements that work. Head over to Symbiotica.com and use code PODCRUSHED for 20% off plus free shipping on your subscription order. When people want to relax, I think maybe some of them might go online shopping, right? That's pretty common. Maybe you look at homes that you're not going to buy. My wife definitely fits into that category, along with many of our dear friends. Might I suggest a change? Try taking a scroll through Vator. I have to say it's really engaging. You can fantasize about travel, and maybe you could just book one. Vator is the perfect tool to ensure you plan and experience the best trip possible. With Vator, You can easily explore and book over 300,000 travel experiences around the world. So whether you're into history or adventure or just looking for something unique, Viator has something for everyone. Whenever friends come to visit me in New York City, I know they feel a little overwhelmed by all the sights to see. I do too. And I mean, I rarely see any of those things myself living here. I'm never sure what to tell them. But Viator makes it very simple. And they even let you see other user reviews too. So like right now in New York, you can book an Ellis Island tour, an architectural yacht tour, or I like this one, a Greenwich Village food tour. As a New Yorker, I got to recommend that because the Village is where it's at if you want to have those most iconic city strolls. Also, they offer free cancellation to help you plan for the unexpected. Viator's 24/7 customer service is awesome too. Traveling can be full of surprises, and it's comforting to know that support is available anytime, day or night. Download the Viator app now to use code Viator10 for 10% off your first booking in the app. Find travel experiences for you. Do more with Viator.
I'm actually interested then in your trajectory from those teen years, doing more and more theater, going to performing arts school, and then eventually making it to LA. How long have you been in LA?
8 years.
Okay. So
8
yeah, so that's like
years.
that's like more or less your 20s, you know. So you must have gone right after school, is that right?
Yeah, so I went to boarding school in at Idlewild Arts Academy.
That's a high school?
That's a high school. That was
And it was a
boarding high
performing
school.
arts boarding school.
Yeah. So I
That's very
studied theater.
specific.
Yeah, it was. So they had a summer camp program that I went to, and I found out they had an academy. And when my parents picked me up, I was like, please, I want to go. I want to go. I want to go.
Leave you behind.
I want to leave everything. I want to start fresh. I want to be my own man.
Dylan, I just want to ask quickly, did you miss your parents and brother, or were you sort of like, nah, they're like, you were just so focused on
I mean,
what
I
you're doing?
definitely, I don't think I've ever said this to anybody, but I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But when I was 15, but I definitely like cried the first few nights at night,
yeah.
because
Oh,
I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm away from home. And
How far away
Yeah.
was it?
so it's like so Idlewild, I guess you fly into LAX or the Ontario airport, and it's like a 2.5 hour drive in the mountains. So it's,
far.
and it's like a then 2.5 hour flight. You're in the mountains, you're in the woods, you're kind of like secluded. I also came in the middle of my sophomore year. I was a semester student. They had semester students and then students that started in the beginning of the year, and it was funny because it was a very isolated place, very controlled environment. Whenever the semester kids would come, it was like fresh blood. Everyone was excited to meet the new kids, new people
Dylan,
to hang
I went
out
to a
with.
small school, and I remember I could still name all the semester kids because it was so unusual.
I know, you're like,
Yeah.
whoa, new
Yeah, it's like,
people.
You're just
What?
waiting to punish them.
You came
Yeah.
in January?
So
Yeah.
honestly, I never felt cooler than when I came at the semester because I was like, everyone wants to talk to me. This is awesome. And I think beyond that, just beyond that superficial aspect of it, I do think that I felt so at home at that school because it was like a bunch of like-minded people, a bunch of international students. I think after that first week and a half or so of that adjustment period, and then once, I made my first friend, then I was like, and in the classes, then you're like, oh, cool, I'm a part of something. And that's kind of when I really felt like I came out of my shell in the sense of who I was and felt better about who I was.
Right.
Then I went to college. Then I went to North Carolina School of the Arts after that. And then I moved out to LA after I graduated in 2016 and came out here. Yeah.
I was watching this interview recently with Kristen Wig where she described this feeling. She performed on stage at the Grammys several years ago for Sia. And she described like all leading up to that. She was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I could be on the couch at home, like regretting all her decisions until she did it. And then she had this feeling set in that was like, oh, that's why I do this. That's why I keep coming back.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a good description of a feeling that I've definitely had before. And I'm wondering if you've ever had that feeling on a project and you could tell us about it.
Honestly, whenever I do theater, or I honestly feel like I almost have that feeling before I go on stage every single time. I love doing it and I love the process. I love the rehearsal process, but I almost feel like before every performance, before I go on stage, I'm just like, what am I doing right now? What am I about to do? I could just turn around and walk out the theater and go home and yeah, they'd be screwed, but like I'd be okay. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I'd be out of here. And for some reason, every single time, you know, I almost am like, am I about to not go on stage? And you hear your cue line and it's like you're taken over by a spirit and you're just pushed on the stage and you say your first line and then you're just off.
Yeah.
And I think that it's probably honestly in that little moment of space in between those two things that's really the gem, because you're like, I'm overcoming this sort of unnatural feeling of wanting to run away and not wanting to do this, but I know I love it. I think that's, and then once you do it, and then once you come off stage for your first scene, then I'm like, I don't have that feeling the rest of the show. It's only the first moment before I walk on stage. Like no one's seen me yet. If I don't come on, that's it.
You could go watch TV.
Yeah, exactly, and that's safe. I do think I have that, but I don't know. I think that whenever I'm in the scene, whenever I'm doing it, it's like literally every single moment of that is like, this is why I do it.
Yeah.
So having gone to performing arts school and, you know, sort of a lot of our guests have had this, a lot of other actors have this. I didn't have this experience. So I'm always kind of fascinated. Whenever I hear people talk about it, I'm like, oh God, that sounds amazing. Because, you know, at that age I was doing television and film and some of it was enjoyable and good, but a lot of it was, you know, not stuff that I would want to watch now, nor did I want to watch at the time. Really, it was just, you know, you're working, you're making it work.
Yeah.
It seems to me, my sense of when you're studying, you know, especially if you end up in a conservatory or whatever, and you're focusing on like the essence of the craft because you're learning the craft.
Right.
You're distilling the essence, and you're kind of immersed in the essence of the craft, and then you're not going to maybe have the same fear until you get out into the field of work where you feel different kind of pressure, you know?
I mean, when I reflect on my time in school, I almost wish I was more aware of what I was doing, because I think whenever you're in the moment, whenever you're doing whatever you're doing, it's just it's so immediate, and it's hard to think about anything beyond what you're doing. It's hard to have that. You can't really have, you know, hindsight. We're like, well, in hindsight, it's like, well, yeah, you have more information now. So of course you have a different thought about something. But no, in the moment, I think I was just I was enjoying where I was at, but I wish I took more risks. I wish I was aware of the space that I was in.
Right. Because you don't get it later.
You don't. It is unlike anything else that you just won't.
Like you sort of get it in between action and cut, sort of. You know, you sort of have but it's not really like that's why I have, jealousy is definitely not the right word, but like I have a fantasy of having studied in a way that just sounds special when you guys talk about it.
Yeah, because it's a safe space. I mean, it's a place where you can do, and thinking back, like I could fail. It was a safe space to fail.
Right.
And I think that in this industry, they tell, you know, it's like, when you strive to fail and you allow yourself to fail, that's often when you find really wonderful little magical moments. Yeah. But it's also terrifying. How are you going to get on a giant set where where all the pressure's on and then you fail? Like what? You know,
that's not your job to fail.
No. But in a way, it's like.
But it is. It should be.
But it is.
Somehow.
Yeah. And so I think that's why I really. Working with Alma, who did Lady in the Lake, like she.
Oh right, yeah.
She really.
She's phenomenal.
I felt the sense that I felt in acting school on that set.
Wow.
Wait, did she direct all the episodes?
She directed all the episodes.
Wow, that's great. That's great.
And my first scene, I remember she led me through breathing exercises. She had me stand up and slap my body to like wake up my body. You know, it's like it was she came up to me and said, this next take, I want you to be bad. I want you to do everything that you think is too much. I won't make you look bad. I promise.
Right. And that's amazing. I love that.
I just remember hearing that, and I'm like, oh that's my
so
God!
Cool.
Like, thank you for that space to explore. Because I think any time in acting, when you're trying to get it right, it's just not gonna work.
No.
It's just never gonna work. So but having that time in school, and also we did dance classes, we did movement classes, we did singing classes, even though it was just a acting major, they had us do everything. We did voice and speech. So I think also opening up myself up to all these different worlds within the craft, I think made me appreciate it more, and just realize that there's more to it, and just get you out of your head, because I think the more that you're out of your head, usually the better it is.
Yeah. Dylan, we definitely want to talk about Lady in the Lake, but let's start with you.
Yeah.
So you were on a very special season of You. Sophie and I always say, I think 3 is our favorite.
Yeah.
And you got to work a lot with Victoria Pedretti. We're like huge Victoria stans.
Yeah.
So just tell us, like, how did you get the part? What was it like to work opposite her in your scenes, and to the degree that you worked with Penn? Sort of.
We had one
everything.
major scene together, right? Where
Yeah,
you were,
we had
spoiler,
one. Yeah. Well,
I mean, we can reveal it now.
yeah, I think we can say it.
You were
He
dying.
spared me. I was dying.
mean,
He spared me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember. So yeah, I mean, I auditioned for that. I put myself on tape for that during the pandemic, and I actually remember I had seen some of the show, but I was like, okay, I want to watch more of this just to kind of get the world, understand it all. So I started with the second season because I was like, let's just check out what happened right before this. And it was the pandemic, and I remember watching the first 2 episodes, and I think I binged the second season in like 2 days.
Oh, wow.
And then I was like, well, now I got to watch the first season. And then I binged the first season in another 3
Wow.
days. Yeah, and it was so I mean, I really loved it. So I think that, and I watched the whole 2 seasons before I did the audition. So I'm sure that
Yeah,
helped
that's
a
a
lot.
testament. That's a
And it wasn't hard. It didn't feel like work. I was genuinely enjoying it. And so it was just kind of, it made it fun, and it made me feel like I could maybe figure out what world this was. But I remember I did the tape, and I had auditioned for the show before. So, and I remember I just did that tape, and I got cast off that tape, which I was really surprised. I didn't do a callback or anything. Like, I was really surprised.
Wow.
Did you have to do a chemistry read with Victoria?
No,
Wow.
no, I didn't.
That's
And,
crazy. Can you send us that tape? I want to watch it.
We need to study it.
Well, they probably already had you in mind as well, because you said you read for it before, so they probably
Yeah, I auditioned
Who did you read
for-
for before?
I auditioned for 40, the first season 2. Yeah.
I could
and
see that
then-
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that I was very excited to work with Victoria because she's obviously an incredible actor. And she's one of those actors that I think makes you better when you work opposite with her, because there's so much that she brings, and it's so loaded, but like tucked in this way where it's like she just shows so much with her eyes, that you can really like lock in. And obviously, Penn, you worked with her quite a bit, so you can probably speak to that as well. But I think that it's also clear how much she loves this, which I like, loves acting and loves the work.
Yes.
And how much respect she has for it. So I
Yes,
think
I
that also
agree.
makes it really easy. But yeah, it was, I felt like we approached it, like we really talked about the scene work. We really approached it in this way that felt like school again, where we were breaking down and coming in with ideas, and then figuring out where those fell, which you don't get that a lot with TV shows, and especially when you're working opposite someone who's quite busy, to have that bandwidth to.
What are you trying to say? No, you're fully right, man. It's you don't get a lot of time or bandwidth in TV, and Victoria was that way. She was one of the people I think of when I think of people who talk about having been to conservatory, having studied in school. She's one of the handful of people I think of. It's like that sounds like something I really wish I'd had, because television just operates at such a pace. Like
I know,
just in terms of like what we do, the essence of it is rehearsal. You need to be able to rehearse.
Absolutely.
Unless you're doing something, I hear that like Joaquin Phoenix doesn't like to rehearse, but so unless you're doing that kind of like extra special mercurial, just like I'm totally present in the whatever. This is what I've heard.
Yeah,
I don't know what the
but it's a
reality
different
is.
thing. It'll just, here's the thing. I had an actor or an acting teacher tell me, you could either do the research or not do the research. You could really work on it or not work on it, but you're never going to know the alternative. If you can't do both. You're either going to work on it or not. And he's like, I would say probably work on it and do the research. But
that makes sense.
So yeah, that's interesting about Joaquin Phoenix. Like, obviously he's incredible.
It also may or may not be true. I don't know.
Well, yeah. I
really.
think that there is something to that spontaneity, and I think rehearsal can be detrimental sometimes. You can run something into the ground and feel like it's stale, but I find that when I'm able to approach it from an open-minded point of view, it's like I only discover good things. I only go deeper with it. I remember that. and we didn't get to work together a lot. But I do want to say, like, I remember the first scene that we were kind of in together, where I like showed up to the door and you were just like kind of say, we didn't really interact, but you know, I had a line to, you know, Vic, and you were kind of standing there, and I remember watching you, and I remember just being like, your physicality was so impressive to me. Like it was really interesting. I just felt like you were it was like so alive in this way that I was like, wow, he's really doing something without, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but you were just so in your body and so physically alive in this really cool way. Thank you. Yeah, I remember noticing that and being like, wow. I mean, that's really cool.
Before this season that I'm currently shooting, that was kind of the only choice I had because I have no lines.
Right,
mean,
you're literally.
It really is
you
like.
have to be quiet for like 2 minutes.
And you guys are doing all the talking. All of you do all the talking, yet somehow the show's about me, and so I'm just like, well, I gotta do this thing with my body, I guess.
Wow. Do you find that like developed over time, or do you feel like you like
no,
right
definitely
away,
developed. Definitely. I think as an actor, it's all, you know what? Actually, never thought of it this way, but I think it's true. I think this has been my version of acting school because I finally, for the first time, I mean, because I started working when I was 12, you know, like I was working. Like consistently, like so much that I actually left school, you know, so it's not like I had all this time to be exploring and self-actualizing in that way that you do at that age maybe. But you know, I have gotten an opportunity to just like really sit with myself for long takes of just silence, you know, and like figure out what it is to be present, you know, in that way. I was longing for something like this. I wouldn't have known it, you know, but I think it's I don't remember exactly. I mean, I think I took to it pretty quickly, but at the same time, if I think of now and I think of back then, first season, I really did develop it. I think.
Yeah, no, I imagine because like the idea of silence, you know, it can be very uncomfortable, but it's very powerful. You know, it's like, but you're like you said, to sit with yourself and just be like, ooh, present.
Well, you know, I used to add a lot of little interjections, like, yeah, oh, you think, I like make sounds because there would be scenes that were so unnaturally silent. You know, the other character has so much to say, I have so much to think, but I would have no lines, like for really significant moments. This other person is being really vulnerable, or they're being really funny, and like nothing, because I have a thought. You know, but when you're shooting it, you realize like I'm not doing anything. Like I don't. Yeah. And so initially, I think I added a lot, whereas now I could be silent for so long. And it's not even it's like I do not need to add a thing.
And do you find that when you don't add the things, like it's more powerful, like as opposed to when you add that little interjections?
You know, I'm not sure. I would have to watch and think about that. I don't know that it's more powerful because when all is said and done, it's not like I was interjecting that much, but I just used to try to just add things. And worst case scenario, I've gotten too comfortable with it, and it's like an autopilot thing. Sure, you know, but which is nice because this season I'm having to shake things up and I actually have quite a lot to say.
Ooh, yeah, that's a nice little tease.
It is. I think that's true. Nava, would you say that's true? Because Nava's been on set a lot.
Yeah. I would say I was gonna spoil something. I won't, obviously, but I saw him do something recently. And was like, oh yeah, I've never seen him like perform his own stunts, and he's so physical. Like, it's just so seamlessly physical. Yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited.
Dylan, if you were scripting it, what would happen to Joe?
Good question.
That
was Nava's question, but I took it.
Wow. I don't know. That is, I mean, it can really be so many different like. There is something to like him getting away with all of it. You know what I mean? Like him just going off and just being like, well, is he going to keep doing it? Like, you know, I don't know how. Obviously, there's been a lot of, at least notice with like 3 and 4, you know, there has been a lot of like growth and character development for Joe, like, you know, kind of reflecting on his own actions and being
I guess so. In his own way, yeah.
In his own way, as much as he can, you know. So I don't know, obviously, what is happening in 5. But yeah, there is something to like him just going off and being like, okay, is he like maybe leaving with this moment of like, is he changing or is he not? You know, and then just being like, that's it. But then, you know, I also understand wanting to like wrap it up with a bow and being like, he's in prison now.
Kill the man.
Eaten
whatever.
alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like no more. But the audience can't be like, is there going to be another one? You know, it's just done. It's just done.
People try. I mean, the amount of people
Yeah.
that are like, Victoria's coming back,
I
even
know.
though she
The
was
amount of-
burned.
yeah.
She died pretty hard.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear.
Yeah.
She died twice.
Yeah, she died twice. And she did come back. She did come back in the 4th season for a little bit. But
Yeah.
obviously it was not
Yeah.
her. It was,
Spoiler. Spoiler. No, it was.
If you
No,
haven't
no.
watched
I
the
mean,
4th season, it's been out for 2
I
years.
say that
so
as a joke.
check it out.
It's a stupid joke.
Yeah. Dylan, let's talk about Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
So you got to be
Yeah.
directed by the legendary, you know, Christopher Nolan, like one of the all-time greats. And
Yeah.
I'm curious, like, you know, those memes about like my expectations and then reality? Sort of what was that for you? Like,
It was expectation, and then like honestly reality met the expectation, which made the reality even more. You know what I mean? Because it's like when it actually meets it, you're like, oh
Yeah.
wait, this is actually what it's like. I mean, I really had like the best experience. It was
That's great to hear.
it was
I would
for some
hope.
reason, yeah. I mean, I think that everyone on that set was just so good at what they did. It like every single person. You know,
I mean,
it was,
you're always opposite Cillian Murphy, which is just an
Yeah.
enormous, like, just what a
Yeah.
lovely thing to get to do.
I know. I know. He's also a very lovely person. And I will honestly say, like, everyone was so nice and just grateful to be there, you know, like every single person.
That's awesome.
And like, including Chris, you know what I mean? Like literally everyone was just, it's clear how much he loves making movies.
Yeah.
How like it's his true passion. I mean, he made that movie like $100 million student film in a way. You know, it's like he would hold the slate half the time because it was just convenient. You know, we would be in a room and it would literally just be him, Hoyta, and the DP and sound, and then he would hold the slate because he was just
Interesting.
like, yeah, it's
He
just,
wants a
it's-
stripped down crew like that, like for
Yeah, he
the
doesn't.
sake of the
He doesn't
scene?
look at the monitor. He looks at the actors. He's
Wow.
behind the camera.
That's very
He's
interesting.
locking in. He literally has this Casio monitor from like the 90s that you can barely see the color. It's all grainy, but he literally just does it to check the frame, and then he watches the
Wow.
actors.
I love that. I love
Unless
that.
he can't, you know, sometimes he can't be in the
Yeah,
room,
yeah.
and then you know, but then he listens, and then that's kind of how he
that's amazing.
judges it, which was terrifying when I got the call back for it. You know, it was my first in-person audition since the pandemic, and I go into the room at Universal, and Chris is sitting there, and when I was doing my scene, he's on the other side of the table, leaning all the way forward, just staring at
Yeah.
me, because obviously he's like, is this going to work on IMAX? You know, he's like, he's like looking, but
Wow.
I just remember him just leaning in, and he was so locked in, and it was distracting the first take. I was like, ooh, Christopher Nolan's locked in on me right now. Okay.
yeah. Wow.
But yeah, I mean, that's just how he directs, and I really did every day. I kind of looked around and I was like, this is really special, which I'm really grateful that I was able to appreciate it when I was there. Because I think looking back, like I really do feel like I did.
I was actually wondering when you were talking about that feeling in school, being like you look back on school and you think a bit like, I almost wish I'd appreciated it more then. I was wondering, it sounds like that thing we were talking about you don't often get in work.
Yeah.
It sounds like you get that in a Nolan film. It sounds like you got that on that film.
No, I didn't want to waste that opportunity. I didn't want to go through that being like, did I really not appreciate every single day that I was on this set? Because
Were you always nervous?
Okay, so this is wild. I feel like I have had a sort of imposter syndrome with every single job that I've done, except that one for some reason.
Wow.
Because I trusted him, and I was like, well, if Nolan's saying that I can come and join, then
Yeah.
I guess I can settle into it. And also, I'm across from like great actors who like, and I know I'm not going to look bad. I know he's going to, if it doesn't work, he's not going to put it in the movie. You know what I mean? Like it's so I think that there was that sort of thing. I also prepped more at that time. I did the most research I had ever done because I was like, I need to be on my A game for this. I need to, and that's how everyone felt. It was like Chris has said in an interview, like the cast knew more about their characters than he did because everyone just did. Like they came with ideas that he didn't even stumble across in his research because everyone was just like, okay, it's time to be at the top of the game and dig in. So it also fleshed out the world with the people that you were working with.
Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, for some reason I was just like, okay, I can trust that.
That's really amazing to hear.
here.
I mean, that's a testament to, you know, the environment that he creates on sets. It's nice to hear when people at the very top of the game are creating that kind of environment. That's you know what I mean? That's like it's really, really encouraging.
Because you never know. You know what I mean? You never know with any of it. But I just remember the first day I showed up, I didn't feel like, because I definitely felt like I was on paper like the least qualified to be there, you know what I mean? But I never felt that. I felt like so welcomed by literally everybody that I interacted with. So that also really helped. It's also helpful when you trust the director really knows what they want. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you work with directors and they're like, and you're like, okay, I don't know how to help you here. But it's nice when there's that. Confidence.
That's working with a master, working with an auteur, you know. That's so cool. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about, you said you did the most research for that role that you've done in any, and that everybody else seemed to be doing the same thing. Is there one, do you have like a story either about you discovering something, or, you know, I'm just curious, is there anything you gleaned from that research process that's a
I mean so much. I found the guy that I was playing just endlessly fascinating, Frank Oppenheimer. He was so brilliant. He and Robert had a really interesting childhood. They like grew up very wealthy in Manhattan. They had like original Picassos. But Frank as a kid, like I remember just learning about all those things. He at one point took apart his father's grand piano just to see how it worked. Wow. And when his father was out of town, and then he was like, oh, I got to figure out how to put it back together before he gets home. And he did it. Wow. And he would like go at night, go into the water towers, like climb the rooftops and go into the water towers and just listen to the sounds. Wow. And so he was just like a really interesting person. He was very curious about the world in this very immediate and urgent way that kind of set the stage for the rest of it. It always seemed like he was thinking about things and just figuring out how things worked. I remember there was a scene that I was in that I didn't have anything to do. And I was like, you know, and I was holding this pen and I was just able to be like, how does this pen work? You know what I mean? Like I was just like, I was able to just kind of find those little, obviously I wouldn't read on camera, but it was just those things to just kind of drop me into, okay, who is this guy? And he actually wound up founding the Exploratorium, which is this interactive science museum in San Francisco. In his later years, Frank did, because you know he wanted people to learn physics in a practical, hands-on way. Cool. I mean, I really could talk forever about him. I mean, I just think that I just really appreciated how he approached the world and how he thought about it. So it made the research very easy.
When you're playing somebody real, which I've had the opportunity to do once, I found it to be very spiritual, deeply spiritual. Mm-hmm. I just was curious if you found it spiritual as well.
No, it did feel spiritual, and it's interesting. It's like a fine line, you know. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm gonna actually become this person, you know, because I'm not, you know, like. But there is this feeling of trying to honor them and just capture whatever bit of their spark that at least you perceive. Because it's going to be different, you know. It's like people are gonna do research about someone, and certain things are gonna stand out more than others. So it is through your lens, but it's just however authentic I can make that, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But it did feel very spiritual, and I got the opportunity to talk to Frank, his son, and Robert's grandson. I got lunch with them in New Mexico, and I was able to ask them about stories about his dad. And the most validating thing was I was sharing stories that I came across in my research, and every single one they were like, oh yeah, he loved that, or oh yeah, he loved that story. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm on the, I'm like,
Wikipedia
I'm not totally
did
far
its
off.
job.
Yeah.
Thank you, ChatGPT.
Yeah. That's all I did. I chat GPT and that's it.
Before it was even out.
Yeah.
So you're also in a new project called Lady in the Lake.
Yes.
Lady in the Lake is a huge Apple Films, Natalie Portman. I mean, Alma. How do you say Alma's last name?
Alma Harrell.
Harrell. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's populated with like just phenomenal actors. Really, really, I thought exquisite use of music, not just in its scoring, but actually in like live music happening in the thing, which is really, really cool for me. I always love that. For anybody who hasn't seen it, it is. I mean, you see Dylan right in the beginning. Clearly, you play an important pivotal role. It's also very clear that you're deeply, deeply troubled.
Well, so I think that something was really important for Alma and I was to not diagnose him, not to have any sort of specific,
Right, I like that actually.
thing that we were basing off of. It was more about his trauma and kind of how the things that happened to him as to why that made him who he is. So yeah, which I think freed me up, because then you're not playing a specific thing. And also, I don't know, that just gets tricky. That's just a tricky thing to navigate. Yeah, for us, it was actually very important with the physicality. That was kind of where we stayed. And I was kind of playing with this feeling of him being trapped and kind of having that be like trapped physically, and that kind of reflecting in how, I guess, whatever mannerisms you see, that's probably the result of that.
Listeners, there will be spoilers. So if you
we'll
haven't
try to
seen the
avoid
show and you
them.
want to, just skip this section and come back to it. But I think there's like a few that are sort of inevitable. But I wanted to ask you, Dylan, I've been shadowing on the set of You this season. And I just hadn't realized how many takes go into, I guess it depends on the director, but like how many takes of a scene an actor has to do. So now I notice as I'm watching things, when I see someone do something that I would consider difficult, I have a lot of sympathy. Like they might have had to do this like 15, 20, 30 times. There's all the different angles. So I was curious, that scene where I think it's in the second episode, you're in a bathtub full of goldfish, naked, you're wearing the interesting, what is that called?
The gas mask.
The gas mask.
Yeah.
And then your mother sort of starts attacking you. And what was
Pulls
it
you
like
out,
for
drags
you
you
to...
across the floor.
Yeah, it was just so
intense.
physical and vulnerable, because, you're just in that state. And I was just curious for you, like, what was it like to film that, and how do you prepare for that, and how do you recover from that?
Oh yeah, that was a really interesting day. That was a day because they block shot the whole series. So I would kind of fly back and forth from Baltimore to LA, and I would sometimes go to Baltimore for a week. I would sometimes go for only a couple days. And this just so happened, it was on the schedule where this is all I flew to Baltimore for, was to get in that bath and get ripped out of the water. And so in that sense, like, I kind of just had to rev myself up for that. In another sense, I was like, this is such a weird job. I just flew to Baltimore to get naked in a tub and get wet. It's like, what am I doing? Yeah, so I mean, a scene like that, there's a lot that goes into it, because I'm naked, but I have the modesty garment on, which is like a very uncomfortable, sticky thing, and you're in the water, so you're trying to make sure that doesn't fall off, and you're trying to make sure that when you land, you're not revealing the modesty garment, and you're able to, it's like there are a lot of technical things that go into it.
It's a dance.
Position your body. It is a dance. It's like, how do I position my body without making it look like I'm doing that, making it look natural and messy, and that actually, the take that we used, I remember that take because I think there was an issue with like dragging me out of the bath and making that safe and making that work. And that take that we used, I like actually slipped a little bit and just like landed on the ground, but it didn't hurt, but it just looked good. It just like, I just remember being like, that's got to be the take that we're going to use. But then in that moment, when I had that fall and I had that hit, I was like, well, shit, the rest of this take has to be perfect because this was the fall out of the bath. This was what we were looking for. So I remember just being like, okay, just stay in it, but don't reveal anything else.
Oh God, stressful.
So so that's kind of and like how I scurry. And
Yeah, you know that given that that's all we've seen at this point. I think that was the moment where I realized like how traumatized this man is. Who's really a bully.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
No,
like,
truly.
that's where you realize like, oh, this is
he's trapped. He's like
completely
definitely
trapped.
stunted.
Yes, like a child.
Yes.
And you're whimpering. I know my the most I've ever had to play craziness is obviously on the show I'm on now, and I know it's a different thing, but like when you have to get into that sort of state, it's there's a lot happening. Your nervous system, just your mentally what's going on. I'm curious, like playing somebody who is so terrified. I think terrified maybe, or there's also a word I'm looking for. He's so I mean this in the most sensitive way, like pathetic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
For sure.
Can you say a little bit about that? Because I I like that.
That's interesting. That's actually one of the earliest conversations Alma and I had. So she wanted me to lose some weight for it.
I also was trying to remember. I was like, has he always been this skinny? I can't.
Yeah, she and pathetic is actually the word that she used in the beginning. She was kind of like, I don't want him to be intimidating. Like he is intimidating in a way, but like I want it to be kind of pathetic and frail and fragile and weak. So that was kind of the thought process behind that. And I'd never done that for a role before, but I was definitely game because I was like, yeah, like this is an opportunity. It's I feel like as an actor, it's always exciting when you get to enter a space that's very different from yourself. And that honestly, feeling more frail, feeling more fragile, like really helped me get into that space in a way that I don't think I would have been able to if I hadn't. And also visually, like I think it just works better than if I was like healthy and fit and whatever.
Yeah. Well, you're very tall and you are kind of broad. You're like your features are broad and like you're a bigger person from what I can recall, and like that's what you look like right now. Did you feel like it was? Did you have like? Maybe the most flattering form of imposter syndrome. Where you're like, can I be this pathetic? Can I? Can I be this kind of small?
No, because I was like, I just want to be. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think I was so much about being like, I just love the immersion that I just wanted it so badly that I don't think I thought about that as much. But yeah, for the character, the weakness, the fear, I think that his big through line is he's really trying to find connection. I don't think he feels like he has connection, but is very afraid to reach out to people. And I think that has to do with probably how he grew up. And so he does find that with Maddie, Natalie's character, that's kind of, he like feels this connection, this weird connection towards her. And she kind of nurtures it in this manipulative way. That's me speaking. That's not speaking for the show, but I feel like it is, and kind of uses that to take advantage of him and kind of get his story, which is what you'll see in that episode, kind of.
You have this big scene where you play opposite Natalie Portman. Can you tell us about that? What was it like to work opposite her?
What's she like?
Yeah, tell us.
She's amazing. She's honestly incredible. And I think that she's very down to earth. She's very grounded. She's a really generous scene partner. I think that was the thing that stood out to me the most. She was really down to work. She was really down to try things and explore. And I just remember feeling so safe and so invited into trying things and really going for it. I didn't feel like judged at all. I do remember when we were doing my coverage and she was off camera, my character's supposed to kind of be infatuated with her in this way. And I remember she was doing this really interesting thing when she was off camera where she was like giving me these looks that maybe wouldn't work if she was on camera, but it's almost like what my character wanted to see.
Yeah, I get that. That's cool.
And and then of course when it was on her, she was playing it how plays it, which is, you know, I don't want to speak for her, but you know, you'll see it. It's not that. It's not infatuation. But I just remember seeing that and being like, oh, you really can as an actor when you're like really give so much to the other person when you're not on camera that they can use. And the fact that we did all my coverage before lunch and she was so there, so present, so with every single take is just, I think, speaks so much to who she is.
And just for people who are listening who've never been on a set, which is most of them, it sounds like, oh, you know, we did some work before lunch. No, it's like a 6-hour long period of intensive shooting. So that means it was just very intense and long, and you did it repeatedly, and she was all
and the
off
fact
camera.
that it was only one setup, like it was all in that room.
Right,
there wasn't much, like we were really just going for it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have breaks. You know, you don't really have you don't have a 15-minute break unless they're setting
That's what's
up lights.
great about those kinds of scenes, actually. I love long scenes with lots of words because then you don't have all the changes of camera. It's really nice.
Yeah. You kind of get into a rhythm, a really nice rhythm that you're able to just keep up. And that's when it's almost like when we were talking about rehearsal earlier, like I almost feel like it's scenes like that where you really, if you get to do it a lot, that's when you really get to discover these juicy bits. You know.
Well, Dylan, you're already doing so much. But any projects, anything coming up that you want to share, plug?
I am in a movie that is going to come out next month that I actually filmed right after I shot You, which is crazy that it's taken
That's a long time ago.
Shot it in 2021. Called 1992, and that's coming out next month. That's with Ray Liotta and Tyrese Gibson. And that was kind of one of Ray's last projects.
Movies.
So that was really great to get to work with him. That's kind of like a heist thriller, fun. It's a great movie. You know, I think it'll be fun. Other than that, I don't know, trying to enjoy life and figure out meaningful things outside of work because it's so out of your control in so many ways. Yeah.
Well, speaking of meaningful things outside of work, our final question is one of those. If you could go back to your 12-year-old self, what would you say or do?
Oh, wow. It's funny when I think about my 12-year-old self, it almost feels like a little brother. It feels like a different person from myself. Yeah. I think I would give him a hug. I think I would say, you're perfect the way you are. You don't need to change yourself for anybody else. And find the people that embrace who you are naturally. Don't try to, be who you think people want you to be. I was gonna make a joke and be like, sit still in class, but I don't think I would have done anything. People told me that all my life. So that's such a. I feel like there's so much that I would want to have a full blown conversation with him. Be like, what are you thinking right now?
Right.
Yeah. Just get to know him.
A hug is a good start, though. I definitely agree with that. Dylan, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you guys truly for having me on. I love your guys' podcast, and you guys are so wonderful.
You.
So
thank you.
Yeah, this was
so
a lot
nice
of fun.
To meet you.
Yeah,
so nice to meet you too.
Okay. Have a great day.
All right, bye.
Bye.
We are so excited that you can now listen to Podcrushed ad-free on Amazon Music. In fact, you can listen to any episode of Podcrushed ad-free right now on Amazon Music with an Amazon Prime membership.
It was leading up to 12, so I was like,
Wait,
I was a bit.
so sorry. Should we pin Dylan if we're screen recording? Don't we do that?
I've pinned him. You don't need to pin him. You can if you want.
For the rest of us?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
We can keep that. We'll just edit out Nava's interjection.